I think there's a huge opportunity for product marketers that are spearheading international product launches because that's your time to shine and become your company's biggest influencer. Yeah. At its core, product marketing is all about relationship building. So when you launch products internationally or within, your own domestic borders, this doesn't change. So being an influencer at your company allows your vision to really shine and get buy-in from other teams.
You are listening to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, the product marketing community that gives back. I'm your host, Louise Liu, Product Marketing Hive, and this podcast is supported by Product Marketing Edge, a technology product marketing consulting firm. In this episode, Bianca Galan, a product marketer at AdTheorent, shares her experience of launching products internationally. Let's dive into it right now. Hi, Bianca. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into product marketing?
Yeah, wow. So I feel like my journey, like a lot of product marketers, has been very, very by chance. I was actually a teacher. I used to live abroad in Spain. And I was teaching there. After my teaching years, I decided to get into market research with a company called Kantar, firsthand building out surveys and working with customer responses and measuring advertising effectiveness. Um, I love market research. It was definitely my jam, but it was hard to see myself grow within market research because it was just so niche down and so siloed. I didn't really get to see the end results of my efforts. So from there, I got into digital marketing, more of like the paid search, paid social side of things, where I was able to actually land kind of like a hybrid role between like a performance marketer and a product marketer. We ended up launching a product from Spain into the US, and I know we'll discuss that in our discussion later on. So I don't want to give too many spoilers. But that's how I found myself in product marketing, where I'm at right now in AdTheorent, a machine learning DSP, and we help support the products there and the sales enablement team there.
Tell us a little bit more about the pivotal project in your career that steered you towards product marketing.
I didn't know what product marketing was. I didn't even know it existed, to be honest. I just, in that role when I was at Fever launching products, abroad, that's where I really first developed the taste for product marketing. I really didn't know there was like any sort of title for this work till like years later on. But yeah, launching products internationally, that bit was something that I really enjoyed because it combined my love for market research, it combined the strategy, it combined those, soft skills of working with people from across different teams. It just really combined everything into one role that I really, really thoroughly enjoyed. I always thought of myself as like jack of all trades, master of none. And product marketing for me was an area where I was able to really combine all of those tastes for all those different umbrella subjects of marketing into one role.
Our topic today is about your experience of launching products internationally. So it happened when you were a marketing acquisition specialist at Fever. Can you tell us a little bit more about Fever?
Yeah, so Fever at the time when I was working there, I don't even think they had a product marketing team. They had definitely a product management team and like UX team, but they didn't have any product marketers. It was majority of the marketing was focused on performance marketing, and marketing acquisition specialists is what they called it back then. But in Fever, for those that don't know, it's kind of, if you're in the US, it's like a Groupon for events. Pretty much, if you do the market research, they say millennials love events. Millennials will pay lots of money for experiences and events. So Fever really capitalized on that generational trend. And they built an application where you can get access to all these really cool curated events happening in your city. They're very famous for this one event in particular called Candlelight Concerts. So if you're in London, I'm sure you were bombarded at one point with their ads. But they ended up going to a point where they partnered with Netflix. So all the Bridgerton events, all their like hit series, they would turn into events and sell tickets for. So during the SaaS kind of boom, especially during the pandemic, you could see like people were craving in-person events and they were craving getting out of their houses because they were locked up for such a long time. So that's how they started to think about expansion. But I know we'll get into that later on.
Give us a little bit more context. What motivated Fever to expand into new geographical locations?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, like the lockdown pent-up demand for in-person events, you had like quite a bit of SaaS booming at that time, just before the SaaS massacre, unfortunately. Um, and the product itself was so easy to scale. Really, you didn't have, I mean, it was based around the app. The app was already built, right? So it wasn't a matter of like building a new app in these different countries. It was a matter of just marketing the app and really putting the events together. But Fever was very, very smart in how they did that. And they had, regional teams. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Fever that you don't really see at a lot of companies is most companies have like a very centralized approach when it comes to product expansion. So you have a headquarters somewhere, mostly likely in the US. This time it's Fever is headquarters is in Madrid. But when you have a centralized approach, you conduct the marketing strategy from that main headquarters, and then you make every other region um follow that strategy or that structure. It doesn't take into account or consideration any of the local market research that those regional teams could, provide. What Fever did, which I really appreciated, was they had a more of a decentralized approach. So because I mean we had to enter these new markets in very quick time period. So like within a month we had to launch within the US. They were very nimble. They moved very, very fast. They allowed full flexibility when it came to leveraging those regional teams and pulling those insights so that you could maximize the benefits of those regional teams and those insights and able to penetrate the market quicker.
So, in your opinion, what are the key factors product marketers should consider when selecting new markets to enter?
Yeah, definitely take into account your total addressable market. If you can move beyond the boom of excitement, see if your total addressable market is actually a thing, how your ROI will be impacted. I think one of the things that Fever and many companies, realize once they start to enter new markets is their ad spend or their return on investment won't be the same across the board, right? So you have to like be flexible with those benchmarks. Definitely invest in market research. I am amazed that a lot of companies do not properly address this and they're leaving a lot of money on the table or they're ending up paying for that later on. So having that market research component, I think, is vital because that helps kind of segue into your total addressable market, helping to discover that, and then also helping you understand what's the proper KPI that I should put for my, return on investment here, so I can actually accurately measure success.
Your background is in the market research, and when you and your team launching products internationally, market research plays an important role. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, this is an area that can be very tricky, right? Because especially when it comes to international launches, this is where it shows if you've done your market research or not. I like to always give the example of Coca-Cola, right? Or Diet Coke. So Diet Coke in the US, as it's known, and Diet Coke in the UK is like Coke's zero sugar product, right? But when I was living in Europe, I would always ask for Diet Coke, and they didn't even know what I was talking about. And it wasn't until months later that I find out that Diet Coke is called actually Coca-Cola Light, in Spain and other Southern European countries. And when I kind of looked into this, I was like, why would they change the name? And the term diet is often associated with like medical or health related products rather than like weight management. And weight management isn't as much of a concept as it is in the US. So I thought that was very insightful that they changed the product name based off of the concept, or I guess the interpretation the local market would have. And I think this is just a lesson for us as well. If you would have entered the market with the name, let's say Diet Coke, your sales would have been zero, right? Because people kind of look at this and say, this is not for me. This is not a diet product. But just by changing the name, you're opening up a whole different market, right? So it's a lesson for product marketers that sometimes it's not the product that's, the problem that's not working or resonating in the international market. It could very well be the positioning of the product, right? So when we think of market fit is the positioning piece, right? So product is something that you might not have a lot of, leverage on because that's something that a lot of product managers control. But the market fit piece, as product marketers, we have lots of control over, and that comes down majority of the time to how we position our products.
How did you and your team ensure the products met the needs and the expectation of customers in the different regions?
That's a great question because especially with all these Gen AI tools, you're running into a lot of what's called synthetic data, right? And synthetic data to inform, your modeling and your research. And synthetic data isn't always bad, but you have to look at the quality of data. And there's so much psychology when it comes to market research because a lot of people will just answer just for the heck of it to get that money. So it's not a truthful answer. So you as the researcher have to really kind of put that investigator hat on and go beyond just the answers to those questions. When I was working in market research, majority of the research that we're conducting was quantitative research, but that's where qualitative research can really be the yin to the yang, because you can go deeper and really get, I feel like, those really truthful answers. Whereas with quantitative research, it's not that it's not truthful, it's a great platform to leverage. But you have to be careful because a lot of times quantitative research are surveys that pop up on your screen or when you're surfing the internet, and usually they give some kind of reward to people for answering it. So you have to look at the incentive behind it.
Can you share an example of a challenge you and your team faced in the specific market and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think without getting into too much of the weeds of it, right? At the end of the day, sales was the ultimate success KPI, right? If we were entering a market and within 1 week we entered, there was no sales, that event would probably get killed. And it might seem harsh to some people because it's, you don't have enough time to breathe, but that was Fever's personal model, just they were nimble, they were quick. They're like, it's not working, let's move forward. I think it was really interesting with the paid ads component of launching products. I think it was very interesting how they leveraged that, because for anybody who works in performance marketing, they know that like setting up your Facebook campaigns and scaling them can take a while. Because I guess the way that data feeds into the campaigns and you have to be kind of live for a little bit. So once you have kind of an engine going, it works, right? You can maintain a consistent return on ad spend across the board. So because they had that built up already, launching in the European markets, they already had a good basis for when launching in the US. So it was really easy to like measure success when enter the US, because if, it wasn't a matter that people are not receiving the ads, it really was a matter that people were not attracted to the events and they were not buying. I mean, you could do some tweaks, campaign optimizations here and there to make sure that you're really squeezing out the full bang. But if people were not buying the tickets or not buying events, we knew that that was not resonating in that market. So we would try to test that event maybe in a different geo. We had our own growth analyst that would work side by side with us. So we'd pull custom like BI reports to understand, maybe is it the demographic that we're targeting? Is it the DMO that we're targeting? Should we change things up? But most of it comes down to that, how relevant the event is in that particular area.
What are some common misconceptions about international product launches that you've encountered?
Oh, yeah. I would like to address my American product marketers here. I feel like there's a general complacency with having products available in the US. I think we often too quickly dismiss the opportunities that there are outside of the US. And those opportunities are often reserved to really big companies like, the Unilevers of the world, the P&Gs of the world, that have the money to have these kind of custom market research, these custom like expansion teams. But I would say just, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be like this big task penetrating a different country. You could start small, right? I think one of the smartest ways that people do it is if you start in the US, you kind of look to the UK and you see how you can enter there because it's the most similar market. Another one that's similar is, the Netherlands. The Netherlands has a more similar societal kind of model like we do. They're very trades-based. They're mercantile market, right? So look into that as well. But don't dismiss it easily. I think that's the biggest thing I would say is there's lots of opportunity out there. You can be scrappy. We live in the age of AI right now, with lots of information in our hands. Try and see. And you could always start small and see if, something works and pull out before the effects are too damaging.
How did you and your team coordinate with other cross functional teams during the international launch process?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I feel like on every job posting for product marketers, the requirement is to be able to work cross-functionally. And this was definitely a role where I had to work cross borders. So you are involved with a lot of different personalities, a lot of different cultures, different mentalities, different communication styles. And I mean, at one point in our office, we had over 10 different nationalities represented, all working in the same office. So you can imagine like how rich the environment was, how much you got to learn from that exposure. But at the same time, if you weren't someone that was open-minded or someone that appreciated cultures, you would suffer. And I think the key to any, cross-functional relationship, albeit, let alone cross borders, is just to have that open-mindedness and the appreciation for the other person's perspective, because that's going to make you understand each other much better and avoid any kind of like tension or conflict, right? It's going to make you a much more patient person.
Do you have any advice for product marketers who are part of the team, preparing for their first international launch?
Oh my goodness, yes. This is your time to shine. I think, as product marketers, we're always thinking about how can I gain buy-in? How can I get influence? And I mean, this is when you're launching internationally, this is the perfect time to gain that influence and grow it amongst the company, especially if you do it in a way in which those regional markets, appreciate it, right? So if you be the champion of those local markets, where stakeholders might overlook those regional markets and you put the spotlight on them, they will appreciate you so much because I'm sure no one has done that before you. And that's, that directly leads to you getting the influence that you need and want. And, on upcoming projects or launches, you're going to have that respect already up front.
Great. Thank you for joining us today.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. Check out our website, productmarketinghive.com, to join our community, meet fellow product marketers, and access free resources. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and give a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. See you next time.